Good morning, fellow judges and friends. Today, I will be bringing to you racism. Indonesia is a beautiful country with its diverse cultural heritage, natural landscapes, and stunning sceneries. Whether you live in the metropolitan Jakarta or even on the countrysides, it is still an astonishing view, isn't it? Well, that's how airplane magazines would describe our country. Now, let's take a look at the present Indonesia. Our air and waters polluted, forests starting to disappear, and overall, environments starting to degrade. It's easy for us to ignore these phenomena, sitting here comfortably in our secure and protected homes. But what about the local communities? The ones suffering every single day, anxiously waiting for their homes to get destroyed one day. And how is it that we are here, standing in this room, preaching about unity, while many of our own are suffering on the other side of the country? And therefore, environmental racism is a growing problem with structural causes that are harming our own indigenous communities. Environmental racism is the disproportionate effect of environmental hazards on a specific community, mainly those with low income or coming from indigenous groups. Considering that Indonesia is a country rich in natural resources, such as nickel and palm oil, it will definitely try to maximize its economy through it. Even during his visit to the White House in 2023, our President Joko Widodo, has claimed the nickel and battery industry as his top agenda to President Joe Biden himself. This may seem like a huge potential for Indonesia, but at what cost? To answer this, let us fly northeast to the island of Halmahera, the largest island in North Maluku. With its sandy beaches, clear blue waters, and lush forests, it has become a top tourist destination and home to over 600,000 people. But, yet again, the locals might have a different story. Now, acknowledging the rising demand for nickel in electric vehicles, Indonesia has become its largest producer, and one of the sites used for mining this mineral is the Indonesia Weda Bay Industrial Park, or shorten it to IWIP. A 51-year-old fisherman named Max Siguro reported the waters to be polluted, to be reddish and toxic for fish. And now, every single day, he has to swim further and further away from shore just to gather fish for his family. Another man, a 42-year-old farmer, saw his own land and trees getting stripped away by those IWIP representatives without his consent. And he even reported that police officers countless of times visited his home and demanded him to sell his land. He had no one to defend him. He had no power, and he had no choice. He gave in with the bare minimum of compensation. And the fact that these communities have no information whatsoever about water and air quality further aggravates the problem. Hence, a lack of indigenous rights and a weak law enforcement has become the structural cause for environmental racism. Setting aside the causes, we should also center around the impacts on the community, health issues, cultural impact, and loss of livelihood. The clearance of approximately 5,000 hectares of forest in Halmahera has resulted in the release of 2 million metric tons of greenhouse gas across the island, posing a new threat for respiratory illness and skin disease. Felix Naik, a 65-year-old man, used to drink water from a small river, but now he has to buy gallons of them every single day. Again, the rivers were polluted. They were full of mud and sediment from these companies. With their land, air, and water taken away from them, they are restricted from living their usual way of life. Ladies and gentlemen, take into account that so far, I have only mentioned one single case out of maybe hundreds or thousands spread across this very country. Imagine the amount of communities suffering for this kind of loss and being justified as for economic growth. How long are we going to wait to take action? Even if it's just as small as informing others about environmental racism, to bigger ones like leading an advocacy. Either way, environmental justice needs to be served now more than ever by the companies, by the industries, and by the government. Law regulations and enforcement should be strengthened further. And above all, the rights of these indigenous communities should be considered with utmost respect. Ending this speech, I will return the question back to all of you. How would you feel if you and your family were stripped away of your homes without your consent, without permission, and you had nothing else to live with? That concludes my speech. Thank you for listening, everyone.